Hello and welcome to Red Shirt Cinema Club, a weekly podcast about falling in love with Star Trek. This week's film is Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. Did you know that was a Shakespeare reference? General Chang knew. Join us as we discuss all the quotes, some of the many quotes, and my God, Jim, more quotes! Is Rob a Shakespeare fan yet? Only one way to find out.
The Klingon Empire has 50 years of life left to it.
To offer Klingons a safe haven within Federation space is suicide.
They're animals.
Jim, they are dying.
And you, Captain Kirk, are to be our first olive branch.
Me?
The galaxy stands at a crossroads.
This is the Starship Enterprise. We've been ordered to escort you to your meeting on Earth.
Guess who's coming to dinner?
I have so wanted to meet you, Captain. One warrior to another.
Right.
On the verge of peace.
The Undiscovered Country. The future.
On the brink of war.
We come in peace, and you blatantly defy that.
We haven't fired.
According to our databanks we have, I shall blow you out of the stars.
Now, the crew of the Starship Enterprise
Will not be the instigators of full-scale war on the eve of universal peace.
They're coming about.
Battle stations.
fights not to win battles,
Incoming.
Signal our surrender.
Captain?
We surrender!
but to end them forever.
We would consider an attempt to rescue them an act of war.
There will never be a better time.
This is Captain Sulu, USS Excelsior. We stand ready to assist you.
This is fun. You do prefer it this way, as it was meant to be. Warrior to warrior.
You cannot take much more of this. Cry havoc! Kill! And let's slip the dogs of war. Fire!
Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
Hello and welcome to Red Shirt Cinema Club. This is your captain, David Jackson, joined today by First Officer Nathan Dighton.
Hello.
And Civilian Observer,
come on,
Rob Pearson.
I still not got a promotion.
We lost a warp point last week, Rob.
What's that got to do with my rank?
You aren't experienced enough yet in Starfleet.
Maybe you could be an intern, an engineering intern.
You're an interested civilian observer. You're on the bridge.
Okay.
You are kind of Wesley Crusher at this point, which
it's
again
not even applied.
Won't mean anything for you. But yes, exactly. In our continuing mission to make Rob a Star Trek fan, we've reached warp speed 4. We had briefly been at 5 before last week's movie, The Final Frontier, which caused us some engine trouble.
It did.
And this week we have reached Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
Yeah.
Which please do make sure you have watched before you listen to any more of this podcast. If you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend that you do. We're going to be talking about everything in the movie, all the spoilers we possibly can, all the themes. And once we've spoiled the movie, we'll be finding out if we actually enjoyed it and have we made Rob a Star Trek fan yet, but not yet. And an important step on the path to finding out is always Rob's synopsis, which I honestly fear, especially when it's a movie which I have enjoyed. So Rob, please, will you give us your synopsis of Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country?
I will. The movie starts very dramatically with a big explosion. And an entire moon has exploded. And we see it from the viewpoint of Captain Sulu.
Yes.
Who is now the captain of the Excelsior, is that correct?
Yes.
Correct. So he's been promoted to captain. He's got his own ship. And like a ship in the ocean bravely surfing like a tsunami wave, he turns the Excelsior into the path of the shockwave from the explosion of this moon, which I thought was very cool straight away.
Cool, yeah.
So Sulu surfs the explosion. But it turns out that explosion devastates not just the moon, which is now destroyed, but also Klingon society. It was a Klingon moon, and we get a little bit of political backstory Klingon lore here. I feel like every movie I'm learning a little bit more about the Klingons.
Yeah.
And I just increases my confusion every time. But anyway, the Klingons, their economy's devastated to the point where they can no longer afford to be at war with the Federation. And so the Federation has a big meeting, chaired for some reason that I didn't quite understand by Spock. And Kirk and the Enterprise are entrusted with bringing the Klingon Chancellor to the peace talks. So there's going to be some diplomacy taking place. How are the Klingons going to move forward in society now, in space society, now that their moon has been destroyed and they no longer have the funds to support the war? And Kirk's not too happy about this. I think he says, let them die. He's not interested in any peace talks with the Klingons because, of course, he sees the Klingons as responsible for the death of his son, David. Anyway,
well, I mean, they are responsible. Well, actually,
one Klingon.
Yeah.
One Klingon.
Well, maybe three. Maybe you could say 3 Klingons are responsible.
But what I'm learning about the Klingons is there's a lot of different types of Klingons. I thought initially they were like a warrior race, but they don't seem to be. There's politicians, there's Klingon politicians, and we meet some very interesting Klingons very soon. As soon as the Enterprise arrives to escort the group of Klingons, it's like a JRPG party here. There's like a smart one who's the leader, who's just very intent, and then there's Chang with an eye patch, and there's something very charismatic and mysterious about him. He doesn't like Kirk.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
There's something going on there. There's a mutual respect, but also like you can tell Chang already at this point in the movie. I was like, he's a wrong-un. He's not here for peace talks, surely.
Well, it wasn't quite subtle enough.
And quite soon, there's what I thought was a very interesting scene, a very tense dinner scene. It got me thinking about what other sort of like what other tense dinner scenes between the goodies and the baddies do you get in movies? Because quite often you get it in like James Bond.
I was thinking Bond. Yeah.
Anyway, it's a very tense dinner scene, and afterwards the Enterprise is audibly and visually just relieved when they beam back aboard their ship, their bird of prey. Everyone on the Enterprise is like, oh God, thank God that really tense dinner's over. Let's get these Klingons to the peace talk so we can get them just out of our hair. All seems to be going well until, out of nowhere and very mysteriously, it appears like the Enterprise has opened fires, fired 2 torpedoes on the bird of prey. But Kirk and the crew are surprised by this because they haven't given the order. But nevertheless, someone or something, there's a big like surge of energy that they notice in the immediate vicinity. And it's left quite mysterious as to what has caused that. We're not sure at this point who's opened fire. Is it someone secretly on board the Enterprise that has fired the torpedoes? We don't know. Anyway, the result is that the bird of prey is damaged very badly to the extent where it loses its gravity drive, and all the Klingons on board are just floating around. And then there's a very dramatic and dark scene where Daft Punk beam aboard.
Oh, for God's sake.
Beam aboard the bird of prey, and someone really enjoyed the weightless blood special effects here, because they go around just
very new. That's what you've got to remember. Murdering
Klingons left, right, and center, just mercilessly shooting them. We don't know who it is. They've got their helmets on, they've got their uniforms on. Who the heck are these 2 people? And I think ultimately their goal is to assassinate the Chancellor. So they shoot the Chancellor and they disappear. They've got their gravity boots on, so they're able to just walk through the bird of prey normally, whilst the Klingons are helplessly just floating around, defenseless. Immediately they accuse Kirk and the Enterprise of having done this, and in response Kirk basically just surrenders. He's like, no, we didn't do it at all. And Kirk and Bones both beam aboard the bird of prey in an attempt to save the Chancellor's life. Unfortunately they are too late, and the Chancellor dies, and I think it's Chang who basically is like, well, you've murdered him, it's you 2, we're going to take you to trial. And so Kirk and Bones are then taken to a farcical trial where very soon they are found guilty of the murder of the Chancellor, but for reasons that I can't remember, they're not sentenced to death. They are instead sentenced to hard work.
In the spirit of the peace talks.
In the spirit of the peace talks,
we won't
yes.
kill them because we're trying to foster some peace.
Yeah.
So we'll go down a level.
But instead, we'll imprison you on this remote, icy asteroid in essentially like a labour camp. Yeah. And it's full of, undesirables. And Kirk very quickly gets into a brawl with an alien with its bollocks on its knee. And
either brilliant or terrible.
We'll get onto that later, I guess. But there's a fight, and then they meet an interesting character here on this camp, like a shape-shifting alien who's. I don't think we've encountered this species before.
No.
I can't remember.
Or have we? We wouldn't know.
Well, who knows?
Point.
Yeah,
great point.
Very good point. But it's one of these things where, like, no one escapes from here. But this shapeshifter knows a way. And the way is just through a little hatch. Come on, this way! And so Bones and Kirk and this shape-shifting alien managed to sort of escape. And Kirk's like, we need to get to a place, because before I was taken aboard, Spock put a thing on me. So Spock knows where I am. Spock can beam us back up. It's worth noticing that simultaneously, whilst all this is going on, Spock has taken charge of the Enterprise, and he is investigating how on earth this situation has occurred. They want to investigate, okay, who fired the torpedoes, who were the assassins. They find out it must have been someone on board the Enterprise. We need to figure out who it is. Anyway, that's going on. The alien, the shape-shifting alien, reveals itself to be not helpful at all, and was in fact trying to lead Kirk and Bones into a place where they look like they can be accidentally killed. So they want, basically, there's a plan to kill Kirk and Bones and have it look like an accident, therefore not implicating the Klingons in the death of Kirk and McCoy.
So
really, they wanted to kill them all along.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting scene where the alien shapeshifts into Kirk, and Kirk fights Kirk. And at this point, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great, because Spock's going to come down and he's got to try and work out with logic which is the real Kirk. That's going to be so cool. But no, a Klingon just comes down and shoots the shapeshifter. But soon after, Spock does come to the rescue. He beams Kirk and Bones back aboard the Enterprise. And we're getting to a very dramatic climax to the film here, where the peace talks, which are happening at a secret location now for security reasons, they are happening simultaneously with the crew on the Enterprise realizing that there is some kind of specialist prototype Klingon ship which is able to fire while cloaked, and that was the ship that opened fire on the Chancellor's ship. And it's also revealed that Samantha from Sex and the City was in fact all along
who could have
a
thought
spy,
I didn't know
or
who that
was. a bad person who'd been there, like she was supposed to be Spock's protégé, but no, she's been in cahoots with Chang the whole time.
Yeah. Bad Chang.
And Spock does like a forced mind meld, which was an unpleasant scene, I thought, yes, where he essentially tries to extract the information. Okay, who are the assassins? The assassins have already been killed. Maybe that happened before. The assassins have been killed because I can't remember her character's name. She's trying to cover her tracks. Samantha's trying to cover her tracks.
Not Savick is her name.
Not Savick.
I didn't know. I can't remember her name either. That's bad.
Is it Ray?
Valeris or something like that?
Oh yeah,
Valeris.
Valeris or something. Yeah.
And they discover where the peace talks are happening. So we've got this dramatic scene where the peace talks are happening, but there's also some kind of plot to assassinate the Klingon diplomat here as well. So the sniper's like getting in position, and it's a very dramatically edited scene where the sniper's like, getting the sniper rifle out. Meanwhile, the Enterprise engages the special Chang's prototype ship in a dramatic fight. It looks like Chang's ship has the Enterprise overpowered because they can't even see where it is because it's cloaked whilst firing. And Sulu comes on the Excelsior to sort of save the day, and they come up with like a grand plan to identify where the exhaust fumes are coming out and fire your torpedoes there. And they both concentrate their fire at the same time. And Chang, who loves a good Shakespeare quote, manages to squeeze one last Shakespeare quote in before the torpedoes blow his ship to smithereens. And just in the nick of time, Kirk and the crew are able to beam to where the peace talks are happening. They take out the would-be assassin, and with one small exchange of dialogue between Kirk and the Chancellor's daughter, everyone applauds the crew of the Enterprise, who have saved the day in the nick of time. But that's it, apparently, for the Enterprise. It's time to come back to the Federation base and be decommissioned. No, it's not. Kirk's like, no, we won't be doing that. Where are we going? We're going to Neverland. Yeah. Second star to the right and straight on till morning.
It's where they've been for this whole series.
Off they
films,
go.
To be fair.
The end.
Well, I'm terrified
Thanks for
to
that, Rob.
ask because I love this movie. Rob, did you enjoy this movie? I got a lot of cynicism in your synopsis. Did you
Really?
like this movie? Yes, a lot. And I can't tell if it's that good-natured cynicism of I loved it or no, it didn't land for me.
I thought as a film it was the most accomplished Star Trek film that I've seen.
Oh.
But I don't really know if I enjoyed it.
Wow.
I found this whole experience of these 6 films so far confusing and jarring. I don't know what Star Trek is, and it changes every film. Every film, I think I've finally got a handle on what Star Trek is, and every film, it changes.
Well, that's not going to stop, I'm afraid.
This was just tonally, I found it very confusing.
I think maybe this is a drawback of our entire method where we've not watched any of the TV show. Maybe this is the experiment,
well, I think
Dave.
we knew.
And at this point, I'm going to say it's your experiment.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, this is the film that started this whole experiment.
Yeah,
because we've said this before, but like, I love this film. I'm going to ask you as well, Nick, because you haven't seen this film before.
I hadn't.
Finding that out made me want to watch these films with you guys.
Yeah.
And so this film is extremely close to my heart, and part of this is to find out: do I love this film because I grew up with it, because I love that crew and I love the films, or is it a really good film? Rob thinks it's a good film, but didn't enjoy that much, and that's okay.
I think if you've never seen any Star Trek before,
I'm fine.
and you watched this film, you'd be like, "That was quite a good film."
Yeah.
Of all of the Star Trek films, it looked the most like a film.
Yes.
The visual language of it was more in line with what I would expect to see if I go to, it felt more like a modern film.
You've made a film, guys. Well done.
That's your was a movie.
But the rest of it, I said, the motion picture felt like a movie.
Right.
The films 2 to 5 all felt like long television episodes.
Sure. Yeah, right.
This felt like a movie again.
Yeah,
but I didn't feel engaged with the it wasn't Star. I don't know what Star Trek-y means. That's my problem.
I think in these movies it mostly just means those group of characters, because we've talked about this, like the kind of idea that you would like Star Trek is because of your enjoyment of sci-fi. There's not a lot of sci-fi in these movies really, apart from the first one, which is maybe the most
dressings of
there's bits and pieces, but the through line really is the characters and different amounts of seeing them. Nate, before we go any further, please help me out here. Did you like this movie?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I loved it, but I think probably I had a similar experience to Rob in that as a movie it's pretty together, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I do kind of have more of a sense. I've been watching original series episodes while we've been doing, over the weeks we've been doing this. I've been sort of dipping in, and so I've probably more, and I've got I really like the 90s Star Trek TV anyway, and so I'm probably just filling in the Star Trek gaps, and I'm enjoying it on that basis. I felt like it was the closest one to self-parody, and that didn't help, and I feel like the older they got, the more they have to laugh at themselves. And it got close to me not enjoying that this time.
I thought it was too accomplished. Ironically, whilst I was watching it, I thought to myself, this is like what would happen if J.J. Abrams made a Star Trek movie. And then I remembered, oh God, he did.
We'll be watching
one
that.
thing I really didn't enjoy was Spock's line at the end, where he's like, I think a human would probably say, go to hell? Or something. I thought that
it's just a weak retread of the joke in 4, right?
It felt really Marvel-y. It felt like if Star Trek was a Marvel movie, that's probably what Spock would say.
It'd already been done better. The double damas on you had already happened.
Yeah.
And I didn't need it again.
Wow, okay. Well, I'm really I'm up against it here.
I can talk about some stuff I loved.
Do, please.
First of all, I've got some more things I didn't like. No, I really liked, what it made me think was about Nimoy, because Nimoy was the person who kind of came up with the original story and was the producer and sort of was in charge of this after Harve Bennett left. And what it made me think, along with 4, was that his process, or his what he reaches for, is how can we bring Star Trek into the concerns of now? And it's basically the story is the wall coming down, right? So I
remember you saying that in the last episode. I'm like, okay, what's the space version of that? It's a moon exploding.
Well, the moon exploding is like Chernobyl, and a sign that the Klingon Empire or Russia is not really functioning.
I guess this would have been just 4 or 5 years after Chernobyl happened.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, and I'd forgotten that the moon, I didn't know the moon exploded, and it wasn't mentioned in sort of any of the previous stuff.
And the wall is the neutral zone.
Yes.
It's the space between the two spaces, obviously.
And then I thought that they just piled so much, like the I don't want to jump around too much, but I thought the ridiculousness of the courtroom scene, only in as much as not all the trappings and Klingon setting, which I quite enjoyed, but just that it was absolutely formulated on the basis of like cliche television, like it's an American court. Like, why is it like that? Why do they objection? Why do they've happened to do that as well? And then, like you said, the sniper as well. That is, that's a scene from so many Cold War sort of thrillers of why does he have to assemble his sniper? Isn't it a laser? Can he? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Assassins need to be faster in movies.
But I guess all it. And maybe this is more like the TV show. It made me think that Nimoy's sensibility is closer to just, we'll do like a political drama or a contemporary drama, and we'll dress it up in sci-fi clothes or Star Trek clothes. But yeah, I actually enjoyed that. And like, so then Gorkan, is that his name?
Gorkan, I thought. But
is like Gorbachev, and Chang is like the other elements in the Russians who really didn't want to. But he was so much like Gorbachev. Even his name is quite Gorbachev-y.
Yeah.
Gorbachev.
And that's David Warner, who makes a reprise. Well, not a reprise. He's back from the last film.
I thought all of those Klingon characters, I thought, were very good. I enjoyed them. They felt like actual characters rather than just...
I think the entire cast actually was great, and that includes the original cast who have had their ups and downs. I thought this was everybody's best show, probably, or most consistent anyway. I thought that, particularly the original cast, all their moments this time felt really together. If previously, like, someone's had a good bit, someone else has had a terrible, like, look at Final Frontier, like Sulu and Chekhov's bit in the forest was awful. And it's just, they kind of like do, this time it didn't feel like they were shoehorning anyone in anywhere. It was like everyone really fit, their roles all fit.
I can't remember Chekhov having anything to do.
He had some good lines. I really enjoyed him being hung over at the helm. And he's like, does anyone know anything about a radiation surge?
There was the bit where they had to...
of my head.
There was the bit where they had to speak in Klingon.
Yeah.
And they were like, quickly...
You didn't like that
Go through the diary, go through the translation books.
I mean, it was a bit ridiculous.
They have universal translators and then suddenly they have to speak Klingon.
They did explain that. They explained it.
Surely a computer... I guess... I've been brought up on TNG, and there's like more diplomacy, and there's people who speak Klingon within Federation. Maybe that was, but I was just like, not.
Well, yes, but not on every ship. They did explain it. I do agree, because they were like, if we have the universal translator on, it will be recognised by their computer as.
I see.
Then why would you have that?
They could have given Uhura a really good moment there. I think
that's true.
I thought she has a good moment.
Lads, I can speak Klingon.
Right.
Isn't she the communications officer?
Yeah, but she's communicating with
useless
in English using the universal translator.
It's a funny scene, but it is, again, like, it's a relatable, like, now scene transposed into Star Trek land. And is it funny? It's kind of like, it's like, everybody remember where we parked. It's like that, but just, I didn't dislike it.
I thought it's funny. The funny, it's just the laughter. It's lived with me for forever. Just them laughing. But just the other person goes, we just have to laugh. Yeah. They're looking around going, what do they say? And someone goes, just laugh. And they just,
and they turn it off and immediately stop laughing. That was funny. Yeah.
That just sticks with me as being quite good.
Business.
But I was interested to ask, well, I guess I was going to ask, what is the genre of this movie? Which we've maybe kind of answered, because it is...
Strange film.
It's a strange film. And I really love, I think of it a lot as the investigation. Yeah. I really hang on to that. And I think that is the bit I love. I love all the Enterprise stuff.
There's lots of Sherlock quotes. So they obviously want to make... It's a little bit of a whodunit, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very much a whodunit.
A political thriller.
And I love that. Someone amongst our ranks, is playing
is
for the other side.
Is it the new person? No, surely.
Well, I mean, there is that, and also there are a lot of dredged up old things in this movie. For example, another new young Vulcan woman on the bridge, which it feels strange, and also the themes of just being old again. Like,
they're not getting any younger.
I really have been excited to tell you guys this, that the start of the movie, obviously, that we saw, they come back and they're talking about retirement, and like they're very tired and like, what are we doing here, blah blah blah. And Spock has that great line, well, I thought it was a great line, where to Kirk, which is basically just also Nimoy talking to Shatner, saying like, have we become so old and inflexible as to outlived our usefulness, which I think is very on the money for what is actually happening to them, and what will, they're not going to be useful for any more movies, really. But originally, the script they wrote and was kind of like signed off, I guess, until they didn't have the budget for it. Yeah. Everybody was going to be retired, and this is way more cliche, and they were going to bring everybody back. And I found out what some of the jobs people they were going to do a bit where they were going to see what everybody was doing in their retirement. And
Kirk pulls up in a car, and what? Scotty's working at a garage.
Scotty is a teacher.
Okay.
I only have 3. Okay. Uhura has a radio phone-in show.
Oh, of course.
And the worst one of all, Sulu driving a taxi.
I almost swore on our non-swearing podcast.
I mean, that is terrible, isn't it?
I'm glad they cut that.
Yeah, really.
I knew about
bad.
this and it's so funny to me that they had all of that planned, and when they were doing budget cuts on the movie, it's like we could save $1 million if we just say, oh, we're all pretty tired, huh? That's the same in the film.
Yeah. I don't know whether that version of the movie had Sulu on the Enterprise or whether he was still going to be captaining the Excelsior. I can't imagine he was.
What a jump from being a taxi driver to the captain of the Excelsior.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about the Sulu thing. Like, was there a production reason why Sulu was not part of the crew in this film?
Oh, that's a great question.
And had to have his own... Because he's only with them physically for that final scene where they all beam into their peace talks.
I don't know if there was...
I don't know.
I feel like if there was a really big scheduling problem there, they just whacked his character.
My heart wants it to be that
he's never
made sense, and maybe they had that idea of the scene where another Starfleet ship comes to help, which I really love. And I got to say, I mean, again, all of this comes apparently through my very rose-tinted spectacles, but I think Sulu is an amazing captain. I think he really comes into his own. I've not really seen any of that in the previous films.
Great. I thought
he really he's so like strong, and he's got some good lines.
Sulu's his best
moments.
They hadn't given him much to do in the other movies, have they? So.
And I guess that's the thing, is it felt like a bit of a surprise, because in this he does really feel like he gets, he's not just the captain. He gets a few scenes throughout as well, and every scene I thought he's...
Because Chekhov has a ship, doesn't he? In The Wrath of Khan, Chekhov's the captain of
he's the first officer of another ship. Yeah, we're not really ever explained, and then he just comes back to the Enterprise. Yeah. But, I guess his ship is, is destroyed or something. But
we're just talking about the, because you were just talking about something that's quite racist as well, but just the, one of the, there's a specific thing I wanted to get to, but one of the kind of themes, obviously, is...
prejudice.
Yeah, exactly. And how far to push that, and because you need it a little bit for the attention to that. And one of the talking points was, and Roddenberry didn't like it, and I can kind of see why, because the Federation's supposed to be extremely enlightened, and they were doing Next Generation at this time. And just for your sake, Rob, I think Dave already knows this, but Roddenberry got involved in the Next Generation and sort of kind of hovering over all of the first season, especially, and made it quite bad, because he was, he gets ideas, or he got ideas, and then he would force them into the and it was like his ever developing sort of theory of what things would be like in the future, and hard to argue with him because he invented Star Trek. And in the first season he was like, no one should argue, because at this point humanity's like eliminated conflict, and it was kind of like, well, how are we going to do any good scripts? And so he was kind of like, Kirk would never say let them die, and the Federation would be welcoming, it wouldn't be, so that would have ruined all of the tension in the movie. But there were things which kind of went slightly too far, and I think that Shatner was one of the he talks a lot about how they had a reaction shot as soon as he says, well, let them die. He had this shot of being like, oh, what have I said? And they cut it out of the film, and he was really annoyed about it. But
he made Nick Meyer promise.
Yeah.
And he did promise.
Yeah, and then
he cut it out of the film.
And the dinner scene, we talking about like people coming together, I think that they modelled it on the big reference point for them was it Look Who's Coming to Dinner. It's like the Sidney Poitier
Look Who's Coming to Dinner
movie about interracial dating in the 60s. That was kind of there. And there is a scene which is like really tense in that. But the thing that I think Nichelle Nichols refused to say, which I guess you were about to say, Dave, looking at your face, was they were talking about Klingons, and they were talking about, like you said, some of these ones who come on the Enterprise are nice, and then she was scripted to have said, yeah, but you wouldn't want your daughter marrying one of them, and she refused to say it because it's just this horrible racist trope. Isn't it interesting, even in the 90s, asking people who've been on this progressive show to say racist things? What a choice that would have been.
Yeah,
well, I'm glad they refused to say it, though.
I can't remember. This is terrible. I can't remember the actor's name or the character's name. He's the one of the conspirators. I can't remember his rank.
Klingon?
No, human. And he had, I think he had been, had a very famous role in To Kill a Mockingbird. And he does the speech, you know, in the big briefing.
Yes.
Where he's like, bring them to their knees.
Yeah.
And
good villain.
And I saw that he really struggled with that monologue.
Right.
Or I saw an interview with Nicholas Meyer saying he really struggled with that monologue, like having to say it, didn't want to say it.
Do you know, it's quite...
but also felt it was really important to say.
Do you know, this is talking about... I mean, who better to talk about representation than us? But like, I think we don't really get tremendously serious on this podcast, but I didn't even think about that. I think with the Uhura thing, it would have been over the line, but I do think there's thing to be said where I can understand exactly why that's difficult as an actor of that generation.
Admiral Cartwright, sorry, it came to me.
But I think also for me as a viewer now, it's just cool to see people, like, everyone gets to be a bad guy. That's
right.
Like, I think that's where hopefully I really enjoyed his performance.
It's a great performance,
great villain,
and he is reprising a role, I think, from 4. He's back, and also we also see the ambassador, the Klingon ambassador. He makes you actually sort of did like I enjoyed a snort of laughter when you saw him.
Was that who that was? I was wondering, like, why they am I supposed to know who this guy is?
He was I think he's from The Search for Spock.
He's the guy who's making the case against Kirk at the beginning of Search for Spock, and they did all of these things.
Oh no, it's 4. It's 4, isn't it? Yeah, it's 4.
I remember now, because I was thinking, this is going to be a deeper, more political film. Then it was about whales.
So it certainly seems like Nicholas Meyer, you know, assuming he had a hand in it. Obviously, he wrote a big chunk of 4, although not the part that features either of those two characters, but they're back for 6. I don't know. Wonder if he
does give it something in that kind of Avengers way. It does.
You obviously mentioned the anecdote,
the ambassador coming through the port at the end. Yeah, the whole cinema cheering.
You obviously mentioned the bit, Nath, to let them die, and then he kind of gesticulates. Because I saw the outtake, well, not the outtake, the take
that he wanted to use.
Yes, and so he goes, let them die, and then he sort of just like goes. Unfortunately, that won't work on a podcast, but for you here, he goes like, sort of like, I didn't mean that.
David's closing his eyes and wincing everybody.
And yeah, obviously Nicholas Meyer said, I promise I'll put that in, and then didn't. And Shatner said he got his revenge. I mean, it's not really revenge, but he got his revenge in the dinner scene. Everybody, he was talking just generally about acting. When you're eating, everyone hates it, right? Because you have to, you know, the food is cold. Yeah. The food's probably horrible because it's cold. In this, it was all purple. Some of it was like squid.
Dyed squid.
It looked awful.
Cooked, dyed, cold squid.
And you have to, if you eat, you know, once, you're going to do like, you know, 18 different cameras of the same conversation of the same meal. So if you eat during one of those takes, you've got to eat during every take. But also Nicholas Meyer did want people to, he didn't want it to look like just people just pushing food around, so he offered $20 for any time anybody would eat, and so Shatner was like, I'll take that. And so he ate
I wonder what
in
the truth
every
of this
single take.
Because the version I read was in Shatner's book,
right,
where Nick Meyer was like daring everybody because it looked so disgusting.
Yeah.
And then similar thing, he said, but I wonder whether he just nibbled one piece, and it is, and now it's like, I want $200 from this guy.
This was a Shatner interview. He said he ate in every shot or like, you know, take that they did, but who knows? I'm sure that there's, you know, it's only partly true.
I've got a small segment for you both in a second, a small quiz.
Okay. Oh wow.
And it's launched off the back of one of the things which actually detracted from my enjoyment of the film was how many references there were. Peter Pan, Sherlock Holmes, and then all of the Shakespeare, and my quiz is about Shakespeare. And I just thought it was ridiculous.
It was too much.
It was beyond
the games afoot.
Yeah.
Like it was constant. Everyone was at it.
And I thought that as a character note for Chang, a couple, interesting. This Klingon's read Shakespeare. That many, it's kind of, it's like hello. I don't know. I just felt like it was parody.
I mean, he didn't really have much else you could say about him than he really loved the classics.
I'm going to read quotes from Chang, and I did this.
I'm going to say now, I'm going to get to 0 of these quotes.
And well, the reason I've done it
well read.
Is mostly just to point out how many of them there were.
Right.
And I missed a couple in the film as well.
So have you gone and got all his the full list of his references from online.
Here are the full list of his Shakespeare quotes specifically.
I'm going to say each of them after you as Chang.
Okay, great.
Because I've
Good.
seen it.
Well, I could let you read. I would like you to read them out, but unfortunately, the answers are right there as well.
Okay.
So the first one is, "Let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings."
I'm not going to do that one. Yeah, that's. Do you want to just know the author?
Just the play. I mean, they're all Shakespeare, mate.
Oh,
so.
okay, right. Yeah. I was going to say that's definitely Shakespeare. And let us sit upon the ground. It's clearly.
I don't know.
No, Hamlet.
You should guess Hamlet for every one, and then you'd actually score some points.
Right.
But that one is Richard II.
Right.
Once more onto the breach, dear friends.
Hamlet.
Is it Hamlet?
I thought you'd actually know that one. That's Henry V. That's
No.
Agincourt. That's when they go. It's an anti-French thing.
One of us has a degree in English.
That's well, and
Two
also,
of us do not.
The other one wrote them all down from the internet as well. Well, the other one, the one that he says, I think, right after that is the most preposterous one, which is "Cry havoc!"
Yeah, I love that one.
And "Let slip the dogs of war," which I actually also thought was Henry V, but it is
Hamlet.
Julius Caesar. Then there's one in Klingon, which I won't do. Oh my God!
Yeah,
it
to
is
be
that.
or not to be.
Oh wow! Full point. Well, points to Dave there. Congratulations.
That was impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Tickle us, do we not laugh? Prick us, do we not bleed? Wrong us, shall we not revenge?
Not revenge. Is that Romeo and Juliet?
No.
Midsummer Night's Dream.
No, that one's from The Merchant of Venice, which
Oh.
is about Jewishness, I think. I think it's about racism and Jewishness. And actually, not a Sherlock quote. The game's afoot.
The game's afoot,
It is a Sherlock quote, but it's Sherlock quoting.
Yes, I didn't think it was Sherlock, honestly.
Well, it is. He does say that, but he says it because
of Midsummer Night's Dream.
Henry V.
Henry V.
Henry V.
This one more difficult. Our revels now are ended.
Yes.
Our revels now are ended. When did Chang say this?
Romeo and Juliet.
No. It's The Tempest. When did Chang say that one?
I don't know. I know that he did because I finished the quote as you said it, but I don't know when he says it.
Well, we've only got 4 more.
They
now.
are a little bit all kind of homogenised for me.
I am constant as the northern star.
That's a good one. That's
Is this
nice.
one Hamlet? I'm just going to keep saying Hamlet.
No.
Have any of them been Hamlet yet?
That one's.
But he didn't ask us where that one was from. So
that one's. You said it straight away.
Yeah.
I am constant. Sorry, that's Julius Caesar. To be or not to be?
Hamlet.
Thank you. Have we not heard the chimes at
Have we
midnight?
not heard the chimes of midnight?
Yeah.
I love it.
It's really good.
Oh, Romeo and Juliet.
See, I didn't even know most of these are Shakespeare quotes.
It would have made the film.
I've not seen any of these Shakespeare films.
Yeah. Who is this Shakespeare guy? That's Falstaff from Henry IV. Very famous character, and also
the character that Ian McKellen's currently playing.
Yes, I'm going to see that in Bristol. I didn't want to say the other day because you seem so, but I am. Orson Welles did a movie called Chimes at Midnight. That's the only reason I knew that one. And parting is such sweet sorrow.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
Oh, thank God.
Going out on a high. So that was like, I don't even know, 1, 2, 3, like 9 or 10.
I
which
definitely
is too
just,
many.
I definitely just love this movie. I think because I just love all of that. I love that Chang.
It's so much like smart. I'm just going to be so smart. I'm going to write this smart Star Trek film. It's going to have so much Shakespeare.
Yes,
why,
there is that.
Why would Klingons know about Shakespeare?
Because it was written in Klingon originally.
But the thing which I hated was in that spirit of kind of like referential competition, the smugness of Kirk being Hitler, 1938.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, it was just too on the nose.
I just really like it. Well, I wanted to ask, it's interesting because we should talk about Christopher Plummer because
Shouldn't we?
Do you think he does a good job? I mean, his character, maybe he thinks, I've seen interviews with him and he thinks, A, it's always great to play a villain. B, I think he particularly enjoys Chang, and also, I guess Chang, in quoting so much Shakespeare, is a bit of a kind of actors. They would tell you You know, like he's like an actor's part almost. It's like a guy who just quotes Shakespeare. This calls for a great actor to act. So did you think Christopher Plummer was a great actor in this?
I thought he was fine.
Well, prick us, do we not bleed?
I really liked it, and actually,
you know, you've got like you say, if you just 60% of his lines are Shakespeare lines.
Yeah.
I don't know.
40%
I think
of his lines
anyone can
lines.
just dramatically say a Shakespeare line and appear to be a good actor.
Oh, really? Right,
Yeah.
give him the list. Let's give him the list. Let's do a couple of lines. Let's see you do a couple of lines.
I will. Fine.
You have to pass it
you
along.
can do
It's
them.
just like, you know, it's supposedly the greatest words ever written. The greatest dramatic words ever.
Right, so this is easy. So Ian McKellen, I hope you're listening. It's easiest thing to act is a Shakespeare character, as Rob will now
It's just
show us.
easy to sound dramatic, is what I'm saying.
Okay, here we go. Pick your line. With everyone quiet, as Rob gives us Shakespeare.
Tickle us, do we not laugh? Prick us, do we not bleed? Wrong us, shall we not revenge?
I like the revenge.
I prefer Plummer.
Well, yeah, Plummer's a professional actor, isn't he?
Now he's getting the
now
credit.
he's good. Okay.
But Plummer,
okay.
you're asking, was Plummer great in this movie? I said he was fine.
Yeah.
I thought he was good. I thought he matched the hamminess of Shatner.
Yes.
You can ask us later on who our best performance was.
Yeah.
It's not Christopher Plummer.
Okay, that's good. I am going to ask you later.
I think you're right that Plummer loved playing Chang, because the other thing that I wanted to show you, which is on my phone, and so we have to lean in a little bit, is that he reprised the role in the 2000 PC game Klingon Academy.
Wow.
Did he?
There's 2 hours of cutscenes.
2 hours?
2 hours of cutscenes of him, and you get to see why he wears an eye patch, because he has a fight at the beginning.
It's like a prequel.
It is. Yeah. It sets up the whole Klingon kind of instability and civil war.
Are you playing his character
you're
in the
a
game?
student, and he gives you missions, and the missions, I've got the names of Shakespeare quotes. And also right at the beginning, he has like, to illustrate, the Klingons are at war, a younger captain fights him and is about to win, and this is the end of the fight.
Where are your famous words of Shakespeare now, Chang? Had you accepted my offer, you would have lived to fight your true enemy. Now you're just a globfly on the road to my ascension.
Poor player. Life's but a walking shadow. It's a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Yeah! See, that's right. He's just done the same thing, hasn't he? Just said the just dramatic, slow emphasis on a few words.
I really love that whoever wrote that game was like, we'll have to do the Shakespeare thing. Get the other Klingon to talk about Shakespeare, get him to quote Shakespeare.
I'm sorry, but I need Rob to understand how much of his day is quoting Lord of the Rings. And
Not that much.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I
And
don't
other
know
things,
about that, Mr. Ford.
just quoting. So Chang, he just really likes Shakespeare, and he goes around. He goes, "Oh, here's a relevant quote for this moment."
Why?
I've got one of those.
I'm not. I've not got no beef with the character.
I've got no beef.
Of Chang. What I'm saying is, you can't be like, "Oh, great performance, Christopher Plummer." It's Christopher Plummer.
I think it. I don't know.
The Shakespeare honestly undermines it for me.
What
I was really enjoying him.
What about his best bit in the trial? Don't wait for the translation. Answer me now. And he's like physically.
That's a quote from the UN.
Stop quoting stuff.
Adley Stevenson was talking. It's during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he's talking to the Russian.
I can't believe it. It's like Minesweeper. I've stood on the mine.
But it's an amazing moment, and he says, "So tell me."
There was a quote.
Yeah.
The Russians are like, "We haven't got missiles in Cuba. We haven't got missiles in Cuba." Then they find the evidence, and then Adley Stevenson, basically at the end of this long speech says, "So will he tell me now, do you have medium or long range missiles in Cuba? Don't wait for the translation, sir. Answer me now." And the Russian guy laughs. And
that's great.
Wow.
It's really, really good.
It's nowhere near. The best quoting was done by Khan.
Yes.
The Moby Dick quotes.
Unbelievably good.
Interesting, because I was going to ask you the question,
Before we move on to that, I just wanted to say what I love about, and I've watched about 30 minutes of the Klingon Academy, is the different. Is like, because Plummer, do you know Plummer's famous Sound of Music? He's this storied Hollywood actor that they brought in, and then you get him in a PC game in the year 2000, and the level of performers who were otherwise acting in the cutscenes of PC games were not. And you know that guy is like, "So what are we doing today?" It's like, you're going to be in a fight with Christopher Plummer, and that guy must have just been like, what's going on?
I saw an interview with Christopher Plummer where he was, saying about how much he enjoyed playing this character and whatever. And the end of it is basically, because they also talk about Nicholas Meyer as a director, and I think everyone agreed he's great and did a great job, and how hard it was because he was having to direct 2 other Star Trek directors in this movie who both had ideas about their characters and how it should be shot, and I think I should have a close-up for this line and whatever, and they were saying he would just listen and then just make a decision, and he would be happily to not listen to them, but Christopher Plummer at the end was basically saying, like, I love this, I love doing this, I don't know, Nicholas Meyer, could I get any chance of another role? I'd love another. Wow. So maybe and that was around 2001, I think. So maybe he was desperate for work around the 2000s, and maybe he thought, if I reprise my role, Nicholas Meyer will see this.
He had a bit of a resurgence in the 2000s. He was working with Michael Mann and
there you go,
Clooney, I think. Yeah.
Only because you've mentioned his name, I wanted to ask, who's the better villain?
Oh, that's a good question.
Khan or Chang? One thing I think you'd have to agree is that Chang does at least have the upper hand this time until the end, whereas Khan, as you sort of ruined for me by identifying, he has the upper hand for about 5 minutes and then he's constantly on the back foot. But yes, who's the better villain, do you think? I don't know what the criteria are for that. I've just asked that question and hope that you can interpret it.
They're actually very similar, aren't they?
They are very similar. Again, quoting
I think Khan's better.
Literature.
I think Khan. I'd be going Khan. He's more charismatic and interesting to watch.
He doesn't quote as much. He's got more of his own thoughts.
Despite the fact I stand by that overall, he was just, quite inept.
Yeah.
That's who Chang reminds me of. It's
Khan.
What's his name? From the Transformers, the one who can't talk and he's only got a radio. Is it Bumblebee?
Oh yeah.
So he just plays bits of songs.
He just plays bits of songs.
That's what it was like. And on that basis, I'm also going to have to say Khan, I think.
Yeah, I think Khan as well.
Also, I think the Moby Dick quote is just better than the Shakespeare, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's so good.
Also,
from hell's heart, I spit at thee.
Well, let me also ask you then, because what I was about to say is that Chang isn't revealed to be the villain really until the end.
He comes on with an eye patch smirking. He's the villainest villain in the world.
Now, I think that's unfair, Rob. People can have eye patches and be perfectly nice.
Not in movies, they can't.
No, that's very true. But, I mean, did you think he was the villain right away?
Yes.
Were you... Okay, fine.
He squared right up to Kirk and was like, something about cold warriors in space. I don't even know, but I was like, oh, it's the
villain. That's respect. Good bit of respect.
Well, I guess the point was that you have an obvious villain and then you have a hidden villain.
He was like, you've got the kind of,
but there was a good mystery,
swagger of Jamie Lannister in Game of Thrones when the Starks and the Lannisters are meeting each other, and you can tell Tywin Lannister, quite a hard evil man, but he wants to make peace, whereas you've got this loose cannon. You can tell he's just like, he's going to be trouble.
Let me ask you a different question then. Did you enjoy the mystery, and did you find it, because obviously Chang, he is the villain, maybe that's very obvious, but he's at least pulling the strings rather than the one actually firing torpedoes and stuff like that. Did you enjoy the mystery? Did you find it a mystery? Or
I did find it a mystery. Or when it was revealed who the 2 assassins were, I was like, I don't know who those 2 guys are.
In the film.
It the lads from the transporter room?
It was the lads from the transporter room. So
when she said, don't you have work to do?
Yes. She meant go and kill these guys.
That's what I did like. I liked when the penny dropped and you realise, that's why. Because wasn't there a piece of Captain's log audio that
and she
was
stood
played
outside.
that was played during the trial that
Yes.
really incriminates Kirk. And I didn't
forget
pick up on it in the movie because she's there while she's recording it, and then the penny drops. You're like, oh, she was there the whole time she was recording it.
Yeah,
very good.
He actually walks past the door, and as he does, you see her just arrive. So she is there, like, it's not even movie magic. She is there, like, listening the whole time.
The only thing that spoiled that was, in order to make it work, when he started talking, it was kind of, I guess, a captain's log, so they are sometimes to the point, but he was like, I've never forgiven the Klingons for the death of my son. Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a weird thing.
Stop journaling, everyone.
It's a bit of a weird thing to tell yourself, isn't it?
Keep
you
your
probably know
feelings
that. Do I need to say
inside.
this out loud? I want to quickly turn our attention just to the kind of look of the film, specifically the Enterprise.
I wanted to talk about the VFX, so maybe we can, yeah.
So they had a new cinematographer this movie, a new 2 Star Trek as well. His name.
I thought you were going to call him a 2-star cinema. That is harsh.
No, I wasn't. Hiro Narita, and his take was that it's a deep space ship. It should be a bit more like a submarine. So I don't know if you guys picked up on this. It is definitely, for me, a darker Enterprise. One of the scenes where I really noticed it actually is, I think Kirk doing his captain's log, and there's some sort of grating above him, which, like, the lighting is causing this, like, dappled shadow on him. They purposefully made the corridors less wide or narrower, you might say, more narrow, and that I really love. I think it does feel, again, like almost like a political drama on board a ship. I'm sure I've seen these, some sort of nuclear thing where people are going through corridors, make way, and they're looking for the thing.
The whole Cold War thing, I just wanted to watch The Hunt for Red October.
Yes.
Like, as soon as I saw
Great
this film.
movie. But I think it really works. I think that the end, I really enjoy it. I suppose it's probably something that Gene Roddenberry would hate. Again, it's like, they're not meant to be warships. Then no, just the look of the Enterprise being a bit more dark, a bit more practical, I suppose. Yeah. Whereas he had this kind of quite high-minded idea of what it would be like. But I think it really works. And but probably, again, it just in this kind of Cold War way rather than actually a Star Trek way.
Considering it's only 2 years, the jump in VFX is nuts, isn't it? Like, it just comes into the...
Yeah.
And it's like we've gone from RoboCop 2 style, like, animatronics to... just looking like every other movie from the 90s I remember. Like, it's not, I guess it's that sense of the visual effects aren't overreaching and trying to do something they can't do. It all looks just like quite, it's not dazzling, but nothing looks like, oh, you shouldn't have tried that yet. Yeah. Apart from the blood, which I also wanted to.
Well, actually, I quite liked the blood. Obviously, by today's standards, not great, but artistically, I really liked just that idea.
Yeah.
Anti-gravity, the blood, it's quite dramatic, isn't it? And then the gravity comes back on, and everyone thought, and all the blood just splats on the floor. I thought that was just a cool idea.
I think it's hard. It's one of those things which is inevitably ages, because, like, you get filters on your phone that can do, like, realistic fire and blood now.
Yeah.
And I think, well, it's funny that morphing and liquid were the two things which they really went heavy on in the computer effects in this. And I do remember from the early 90s, those were everyone was like, like from Terminator 2 or that Michael Jackson video, like morphing was just like, oh my God, how are they doing this? And obviously, and Terminator 2 also, like the liquid effects. It feels like these are two early things that people were just astonished, or that there were focuses of computer generated imagery for some reason. And here they are in this film.
Some of the prison scenes, well, not really the prison scenes, the external prison scenes, is actually shot in Alaska as well. I thought that, where there's a moment where they're walking, all the stuff shot from a helicopter, I guess, where they're walking towards the edge of a glacier. That's really in Alaska, and that's a lovely bit with the music as well. And I actually wanted to mention the music. I think it gets first of all, I think the music is great in this movie. I don't know if you guys noticed it. Again, it's a movie I've heard loads of times, but the opening credits especially really set the tone.
Yeah.
Quite a dark, brooding score. They said that one of the influences was Firebird. I don't know if you know that bit of music. Also the planets. I think they started with the planets, which is probably a bit of a funny place to start, and then sort of like, oh no, Firebird. But you can kind of hear that planets. There's a bit of a Mars kind of like
I did pick up on that. I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
And the music, I think it's really, really great. There's the opening credits, that bit on the glacier, and then the whole sort of final 10-minute battle scene, Sulu racing over Chang fighting and quoting. The music's just really great, amping up and up and up and up. I thought it was really, really fantastic, and it's a new composer.
Can we talk about one thing which Rob won't have noticed or known, but I mentioned it last time, which was the Klingon attorney who's helping Kirk during the trial is the same character, Michael Dorn, and he's also called the same name as Michael Dorn's character. He's a regular on Star Trek: The Next Generation. He's like the security officer. So the idea is that he's like an ancestor of his,
right?
Worf. And then he like David Warner and Michael Dorn are both. I don't want to bang on about Klingon Academy, but they're both in Klingon Academy.
What?
And Michael Dorn plays another. You'll love this, Dave. He plays another character, and he's giving you like a briefing before a mission, and his character's like Nak Tok or something, and he says, "Don't confuse me with my brother, Worf."
For God's sake, we're going to have to address it.
I just love that he never says no to Star Trek work. Would you like to be? Yes. Yeah, I do want to be in that.
Well, I mean, maybe we've reached the point where I will ask you your standout performance. Because of that, Rob, I was going to ask if you noticed Worf at all. I really enjoy his performance. He's just a really loud... He's got such a booming, loud voice. I don't know if you can even recollect him now, but he says like...
I can't.
If there was no gravity, how are these men walking? It's just like, I think he's just really... Objection was what he mostly said. But should we do favourite character / performance in this movie? Do you have one?
I do. It's Kim Cattrall for me.
Yeah?
Thought she was great.
She was great.
Just unexpected. Didn't expect to see her in this film. I don't really know much that she's done outside Sex and the City. To see her in Star Trek, I thought was cool. And... I enjoyed the villain reveal at the end, or at least the fact that she was, the mole on board the Enterprise. And I thought she had like a charisma and an authority about her that was just really interesting.
I like it's funny with a Vulcan villain. What I like that you don't really get that moment of
no.
She's just like, yeah, I did it.
Well, funny enough, I was thinking I haven't thought too much about it. I do wonder how kind of logical she is. It feels a little bit emotional what she's doing, and like I said, I haven't given it too much thought. But she is a bit right, like, and where she's like, I don't remember. It's like that's a bit of an emotional choice.
Well, he also says a lie because he's shocked because Vulcans can't lie.
A choice,
yeah, and a choice,
which he had said earlier. She said to him a lie, which I think was when Starfleet was saying come back to base, and they were like engine trouble, and she was like a lie.
Is it that they're physically incapable of lying, Vulcans?
No, not at all.
The idea is that it's extremely difficult once they've done all their Vulcaning.
I thought in particular her performance during the forced mind meld bit was very strong.
That's quite an
unpleasant moment.
An unpleasant moment, yeah. Nath, did you have a favourite character or performance you wanted to mention?
I'm going to have to go with one of the Klingon. It's got to be Plummer for me, I guess. I thought Nimoy was really good. It's sliding back into being quite understated, but... Plummer is having a sort of fun which I think was really needed in the centre of this film. Like he's the big distraction. So I enjoyed that. He needed to go big.
For me, I'm going to go with Sulu.
Of course.
I have to really, because not only was this film started the podcast, but it was actually Sulu that started the podcast. Just because one day I just said to Nath, "Fly her apart then." I think.
We were talking about a deadline or something.
I'm not
going to be able to do it.
If we go any faster, she'll fly apart. Fly her apart then.
We're probably
I was
late
like,
for
I don't know. That's had a real effect on me, apparently, because
It's a great scene. It was very difficult to watch it with fresh eyes. What did you think of that moment, Rob?
I've forgotten the moment we're talking about.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It's when he's racing to save the Enterprise and his helmsman says, "She'll fly apart." And he's like,
why aren't we? He's like, we got to get there. The Enterprise is going to be destroyed. The peace talks. He's like, what? We got to go faster. Wow. And Hill's like, we can't go anywhere. She'll fly apart. He said, fly her apart then. I've said it 3 times now.
Because he wants to go and help his friends.
It's so good.
I'm sorry. The moment had no impact on me.
He would destroy his own ship to help his friends and peace. That's amazing. That's character. That's Sulu.
It was my favourite Sulu movie.
Yeah,
Sulu was great in this. I agree.
One person we haven't spoken about very quickly is Iman as well. David Bowie's lovely wife.
Yeah.
A shape-shifting
alien.
Yes. Did you like that character? Did you think she did a good job?
I thought she did a good job. I did not like that character.
I thought she did a good job.
I didn't like the trope of like Kirk bangs. I just didn't like that whole. I thought, because we spoke about the romance at the end of For a Voyage Home, and about how the delicacy of not saying, Kirk still got it, and like having him like do that. It was made more elegant to have a sense of it and it going away, and it's, a bit more longing.
It's interesting you'd say a trope, because I don't think in these movies we've seen any of that really, apart from that that kind of almost romance.
It kind of plays on the original, I guess, in the original character, and I was just like, but even though it's undercut, because then she turns into a giant monster.
I think that's the only reason it's there. Thinking about it, I don't think that it's like, let's show that Kirk still got it or whatever. No. I think it's just there so we can have a good joke when you
inevitably live through the moment of that.
Yes,
and then have the. So
I'm not saying that it's the end justifies the means.
And then it did lead to the Kirk, which we haven't spoken about really, apart from in Rob's synopsis, but the Kirk versus Kirk scene.
Yes,
and then her.
I can't believe I kissed you.
Yeah, I thought that would be like your dream or whatever, and I kind of thought that's funny, and again, but it's so close to parody that it was.
Yes, you're right. It's very knowing. I mean, that line is really for Shatner.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah,
and written for him. And I saw an interview with Nick Meyer, I think, and he was saying he was nervous that Shatner was going to be offended by that line, and he thought it was hilarious.
Right. Well, because I think the thing is, going back, like I said, I've watched a couple of episodes of the original series, and there is none of this. This is all about their personas seeping into the characters and then reacting to it within the frame of the film.
Last thing before we get on to the critical reception is just favourite scene. Rob, did you have a favourite scene?
I think it's got to be the anti-gravity assassination scene.
Yeah.
It was very dark, very dramatic. Wasn't expecting it.
Some good physical effects.
Yeah.
Some good in-camera effects.
Artistically very striking, I thought.
Yeah.
It shocked me. Like, there's a degree of violence again. I remember we talked about that after The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
That I just don't really associate with Star Trek.
Shooting people's arms off.
Yeah. It was... Yeah. I thought that was great.
And the Klingons, helpless.
Yeah.
The gravity made them helpless. They couldn't fight back, and they were just
strength.
Very horrible, like just killing people who are basically defenseless.
Yeah.
Like, there's another version where they just walk past them all and just kill that one guy, really. But anyway, Nath, how about you? A favourite scene?
Do you know, I enjoyed the whole film, but I think probably the Sulu on the Excelsior moments, just because they're very different in there, and they're nothing close to parody. Oh, and there's the Christian Slater. Cameo.
I forgot Christian Slater was in it.
Yeah,
he just really likes Star Trek, I think.
Well, I was going to ask about that, because he's not in the Excelsior does its farewell, and all the crew.
He was there for one day.
He's not in that scene. I was like, where's Christian Slater? He's not there.
I think I probably read about this at some point, but then he comes in. They do it quite nicely, don't they? Because he comes in silhouette, and his voice is incredibly distinctive.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's Christian Slater. That's weird. And then they turn the light on.
I didn't realise, when he obviously looks so young in this, I don't know enough about Christian Slater's career to know how famous he was in 1991.
He'd already done Heathers, Pump Up the Volume.
Okay.
And it's the same year that he was in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
So already very well known then.
Yeah.
I've got 3 scenes. One is my actual favourite, and then 2 that I'm just going to quickly touch on because we haven't spoken about them. I think my favourite scene is Kronos 1 being attacked, where anyone know anything about radiation shells, or only the size of my head? Everyone's a bit hungover, and then they're looking and they're watching, and the shock. And then I love the snappy back and forth with did we find those torpedoes? And according to the computer, we did. And then Scotty's like, no, we did. I'm telling you, we didn't, or whatever. I just find that setting up the mystery, the did we, didn't we, what's going on, nobody knows. I find that it's really exciting. So I really enjoyed that scene. But 2 more that I wanted to talk about. One is really part of a scene, and that's just Spock and Bones performing. Yes. Would you care to join me in some surgery on a torpedo? Fascinating. I really love that. They're just like...
Well, I was going to say right at the end, because we've been talking about Chang, and Bones saying, I'd pay real money if you shut up.
If you shut up, yeah. That's really, really good.
I liked the exchange between Spock and Scotty. I can't remember the exact context around it, but Spock's basically like, how long would it take to... Sorry, we're ready to go now.
There's nothing wrong with the thing.
Excuse, but no, hint.
Mr. Scott.
Mr. Scott. Oh, yeah, it'd take me weeks.
2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
And then, the last one, this is a guilty pleasure favourite scene for me. And I'll ask you guys whether it hit home for you, is the final scene. Everybody returning to the bridge, and that very, not even pretending now that we're doing a movie anymore, slow move forward of the camera whilst Chekhov is literally looking down the lens and smiling as and they're all just looking out. Let's ignore for a moment the second star to the right and straight on to morning, but that scene they arranged to shoot on the last day of filming, so it would be the last thing that they all did together, so there was some real emotion for them there, that this was the end of their Star Trek journey. Well, I want to, at least together.
I wanted to quickly talk about the second star to the right bit, because at first I found it very cheesy.
Same.
But then thinking about it, I actually thought it was quite poignant.
You think about what it actually means.
Yes, it's they don't want to grow up. Kirk doesn't want to grow up. He's going to Neverland, man. And his crew is the Lost Boys, and they're just going to stay immortalized forever.
Yeah.
These rogues that just want to have fun.
Although what I like is
go on their adventures together.
I watched it and I had the idea that Chekhov just puts in Starfleet headquarters. Yeah, sure thing, Captain. He's like, but we're going back.
I think you're right, Rob. And also, that I've got a thing which I'm annoyed, because a similar reaction to that. But then it's the Undiscovered Country, and just it bugs me the whole way through. It really specifically means death in Hamlet,
right?
Like the Undiscovered Country.
Is it another quote? The Undiscovered Country.
Yeah. But what
sake.
lies? Yeah, in that beyond that sleep of. Dream of whatever it is. I can't remember.
It's in Khan, isn't it? Doesn't he say it in Khan?
Yeah. Because he wanted Nick Meyer wanted to use the title for Khan.
Yeah.
Anyway, it really specifically means the undiscovered, from which from whose bourne no traveller returns. Right. It means dying, and that's what Hamlet is to be or not to be. It's about should I kill myself or not? And in this, it just means some potential space we haven't explored yet, and it's quite similar to Let's Go to Neverland. It's like this thing which definitely means death. It doesn't now. It just means whatever's out there. It's I
think you've been a little bit harsh. As in, I think you're absolutely right. But it also, it means change, and it obviously they're talking about. I think it's actually really relevant today about prejudice, and it's about that. And death, I guess, is kind of what people are thinking of when they're thinking of change. If we work with these people, it's the end of our civilization. It's the end of life as we know it.
They're always talking about it in the dinner scene. They're talking about we can explore this undiscovered country, and immediately it's just like, you've read that wrong. You've not read the notes there.
No, that's fair enough. But I guess,
and then when they pluralize it, and all the undiscovered countries.
That's not what that means. I don't know who said that.
And then
that's not what that
Klingon
means. Yeah,
but again, it does. Well, it's about the theme of these kind of addressing the idea of the age of these people and refusing to stop adventuring. So in a way, I now view it more positively because of what Rob said.
As someone who's clearly never read Shakespeare, I'm fine with it. But I do. I think. Especially actually that you've got a character now that you've pointed out, the character who's obsessed with Shakespeare, just banding it around it's like, I'm just thinking it's like if you said, do you want some cake, and I said to be or not to be, that is the question. So Nath,
yes.
I think we've talked all over this film.
Yes. How did it do?
What was the critical reception?
It did fine. So it was released for the 25th anniversary. Which is why it had that kind of note of finality, and I think that they were all kind of aware. I think also because 5 had done critically badly, it made money, but it dropped off from the other ones. So I think this was seen as a bit of a swan song, but critically was very well received. Actually, Shatner in his book quotes a review which I've not been able to find on the internet, which describes him and Plummer as two old Hammosauruses chewing up the scenery with obvious talent and delight.
Hammosaurus.
The Hammosaurus really stayed with me. And Janet Maslin, I think in the New York Times, said Star Trek 6 is definitely colourful. And Hal Hinson says that Meyer is capable of sending up his material without cheapening it, although I'm not sure that he didn't cheapen it. But basically it's critically well received, and it makes the figures are a little hazy, but the box office always listed as just under $100 million, so a healthy return.
What was the budget?
So it was 30, then they cut it to 25, and then it went up a little bit when
still did. Yeah, it's a good profit.
70 mil.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, I'd take it.
Yeah,
it didn't trouble the top 10 that year. The problem is it's making 100 million, right? But this era of the 90s now, the Terminator 2 was the number one film, made 520 million.
Oh my God!
Blimey.
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves made 390.
Wow!
And Beauty and the Beast, a Disney movie, made 346. So Star Trek
is
is
a bit sad.
And this is the one we're now into. Like, I can remember this. I remember this coming to home video. I remember living in Kent, fans, in Cuxton in Kent, and I walked past the video shop, which still existed at that point, and they had a picture of Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country, like it was the one in the door. And just, you know, I'd been, like I said before, I've been to see Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves 5 times. Like, I was watching a different sort of movie, and I looked at it just thinking, are they still making those? Like, even though I was only 11 or 12 when it came out on video. So I do think at this point it is, you know, we talk about the Neverland thing and whether it's parody. I think that at this point people were like, I certainly was like,
bit tired. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I can see everyone being a bit tired of it. Those numbers for the top 10 and those movies. Yeah, it's obviously got a place in my heart, but maybe not in the world's. Rob, we need to find out. I think you might have already. I wonder if you've already touched on one. Did this film spark any ideas for some recommendations you could give us?
Yes, well, I've already mentioned the James Bond thing. I enjoy those sort of like tense, really polite, civilized standoffs between people who obviously don't like each other,
like a Christoph Waltz kind of.
Yeah, it was a really that would be the best example of it in Inglourious Bastards. But yeah, any James Bond dinner scene where James Bond meets the main villain for the first time reminded me a lot of that dinner scene between the crew of the Enterprise and the Klingons. The obvious reference for me throughout the movie was the Thing, like the shape-shifting alien having a fight in the ice. It didn't linger there very long, and I was surprised. I thought they were definitely setting it up for there's going to be a dramatic scene where Spock has to work out which is the real Kirk. But it doesn't linger there for very long. But immediately I thought, well, that's an overt reference to the Thing, right?
I guess I didn't even think about it.
Who is the real? They're in the ice. Who is the real Kirk? Surely that was just someone going, let's do a little nod to the Thing. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Hilariously, I've still never seen the Thing.
Oh my goodness!
I just know that
even I've seen the Thing.
I just know there's a shape-shifting alien that takes on the appearance of people, and it's in the ice.
Wow. Okay, well maybe because you haven't seen the Thing, maybe that's why you got the Thing reference.
That's true.
From that movie,
it's a darker moment. Yeah, that big. Yeah, she looks like a tall dog. That is not what the Thing looks like.
No, not at all. And you know, I hesitate to ask. I've got to ask what warp score warp speed we're moving at now.
Come on, Scotty.
We were back down to 4.
We haven't really defined at which point it's good, anyway,
it's more like it's like a speed, isn't it? It's like a temperature check.
Yeah.
It's like on the journey to potential fandom.
Yeah.
How is Rob warming to Star Trek? The last movie, he felt a little bit cooler on Star Trek.
He certainly did.
How are you feeling about Star Trek at this moment in time?
You've got to be honest.
We're still at warp 4.
Yeah. I thought that would happen. That's okay. I'll take that. I definitely don't want to go further down.
We're going faster than we were at the start of the podcast.
Yeah, that's true. It's fair enough. Well, I think I'm
Nobody liked that.
I think I'm using this right when I say that for Rob at least, we are now facing an undiscovered country. Because it's pretty obvious that the old cast, the old crew have reached the end. I don't know if you saw them all do their signatures, which made me well up a little bit on the credits.
It made me squint. I was like, what's going on?
But it's unlikely that we're going to be seeing them again, but there are more films to come. What's going to happen next? To find out a little bit of context, Nathan, I hope you've prepared something to tell us about the next movie in the series.
I was half an hour late coming to this recording because I was still finishing it. And it'll be interesting to know how we proceed over the next few, what context we give Rob, because I feel like there isn't another set of movies now which has a run like this. There'll be a set of movies, as you know, where they reboot, and I'm really interested in watching them with you, and again, having seen all of them myself recently. But I wonder if we should maybe think about how to help Rob to understand the next few movies, because it's a new crew, and this is, if Dave loves these movies, I love The Next Generation, and I know you do as well.
Yeah.
So imparting some of that might be more important, and I'm not sure how we can do it. But in terms of just what happened in terms of the production side of things, The Undiscovered Country felt like a swan song, 25 years, and it performed respectably with good reviews, but there was no pressing reason why they would carry on making films with the original cast. And also, as we spoke about last time, that cast had gotten more and more expensive, and meanwhile there was a television version of Star Trek, which after its first couple of seasons especially had started to perform very well. And the weird thing is, in jumping between, so the Star Trek films, what are they? Kind of, can we remember all the dates? So like 79, 82?
Yeah.
And then
84,
86, 89,
91.
So TNG comes on TV in 87. So it's being made at the same time as they're making, going back to the Final Frontier, but it's announced earlier than that. It's announced around the same time as Undiscovered Country. And then it's just come on TV. So it first aired in September 87. So by the time the Undiscovered Country was released, TNG is actually into season 5. So by the time the 25th anniversary of Star Trek comes along, some of the big storylines, which feels like a spoiler to say, but you know what, Locutus has happened.
Yeah.
They're on their way to getting to the end, actually, and they start planning for a new film. And so in planning for a new film, Paramount combined the ending of that TV series with TNG transferring from TV to the big screen. So they knew they were going to use the original cast. They knew they wanted to make movies with TNG, and so they decided to kind of use the finale as a way to leapfrog and use everyone's interested in interviewing everybody because, your TV show's ending. And they were able to say, well, we're not quite finished.
Right.
in November, you can come and watch us on the big screen. So Rick Berman was the producer on TNG, and he outlined 3 reasons that this happened. I'm just going to bang through these as bullet points. So he was saying that Next Generation itself was getting more expensive, and that TV shows tended to. So to lock people in for anything past season 7 would have started to get really expensive, and the cast is kind of established, and all the directors and the screenwriters are. It's just a factor. You kind of accumulate expenses as you go on with your talent. They decided that they definitely couldn't be on TV with the same cast as while they were also trying to launch movies. Right. Why on earth would people go out and pay to watch something which they can see on TV? It's an interesting problem that you kind of have with Marvel now, and let alone that kind of divide between kind of movie stars and film stars. And they were keen, the sales and commercial people at Paramount were keen to do another show because they had such success. Actually, we talked about that kind of first run syndication where they hadn't sold it to a network, and instead they sold it to a kind of individual stations across America, and they'd actually meant that they had they were making more money per episode in ads than they would have done if they sold it as a network show. And they were kind of like, well, having with this track record, if you give us another Star Trek show, we can probably go and get more money. You can't undo a deal, but you can make a new deal. And that's where Deep Space Nine, not where it comes from, but that was part of the impetus behind Deep Space Nine. So Deep Space Nine, Rob, is the second new Star Trek series, which came onto TV alongside, overlapped for one season, I think, with Star Trek The Next Generation, and then that became TV, and Star Trek The Next Generation became movies.
So by the time I'm going to be seeing this new crew, their TV show's already finished.
Yes. Yes, exactly that. It finished, so DS9 was launched in 1993, so it overlapped for 1 year. Next Generation finale is in May 1994, and Star Trek Generations arrives in November 1994.
And that's the next film we're going to be watching.
Yes, so only 3 years again, so on a similar timeline to the existing ones. I was actually really impressed when I read all the dates because you kind of see, a great example is Star Wars right now. They're churning out stuff for TV. It's not really linking up with the cinematic stuff at all, and they're having trouble keeping that pipeline going. There's loads of kind of shareholder displeasure, kind of like, this Star Wars costs loads of money and it's an absolute cash cow. How are we not putting stuff into? And so to see Paramount just making these films, ending this TV show which they brought in, there's 7 seasons of it, it goes off into syndication forever, it's going to be making them money forever. The cast transition to movies which they prefer to make, and at the same time they have also had a one season overlap with some shared characters with a new. How well managed is that?
Yeah.
I was super impressed.
Yeah.
And so that's what we get. And this film is in the hands of Rick Berman as the producer of The Next Generation. It's handed over to Ron Moore and Branson Saga, who were a couple of the writers from The Next Generation. They had quite a lot of freedom. The big hook, which I'm not sure you're aware of at all, Rob, is that it's called Star Trek Generations. So it's a crossover film. And the hook of it is...
Well, it's going to open with it.
We're wondering how much to tell you. Sorry.
I don't think you should spoil. If it's...
Well, it's called... I'm always like, we'll spoil as much as a poster would.
Right.
It's called Star Trek Generations. And they were looking for ways to use the Star Trek universe to launch this new series of movies.
Right.
That's, I guess, as much as we will say.
That's all we'll say.
Dave has given me such a look.
No, not at all.
I guess this is funny because because I think people at the time would know more and they'd have seen more and they would have read more interviews, but we can use you as a small Star Trek lab rat and just not tell you anything.
Right.
Yes.
And see what you think. So that's what we'll do. So just then to skip forward into what's been happening in the years in between, I'll do this nice and quick. 1992, top 3 movies at the global box office were Aladdin, The Bodyguard, and Home Alone 2.
Oh, Disney is smashing it at the moment.
I know what's going to be in 1993.
Well, I'll tell you, as soon as I've told you the sci-fi movies from 92, which were rubbish, Alien 3 contested edgelords on the internet will tell you that it's actually fantastic, but it's not. It's absolutely rubbish. And I love David Fincher. And Lawnmower Man, which I watched once and really upset me and I've not seen since. 1993...
Jurassic Park.
Yes, Jurassic Park is...
it feels like a massive like cinema.
Yeah.
Pre and post Jurassic Park.
I went there for my, 8th birthday?
I wasn't allowed to see it. My parents were like, no, too scary for you.
I wasn't allowed to go to Jurassic Park with the actual dinosaurs. Yeah, you're right. And there's an interesting documentary on Disney Plus about ILM, which has been doing all the special effects for Star Trek, where they talk about Jurassic Park kind of being the crossover between creature and model effects and digital, and they decide to do something which they would have always done very proficiently with made crafted stuff, and they do it on a computer. Number 2 was Mrs. Doubtfire. Number 3, The Fugitive.
Oh, love that movie.
Why have I written out the top 10 for 1993 instead of 1994? I don't know why. I guess I was just excited. Oh yeah, it's because I just thought that 1993 had this weird vibe of sort of heavy-hitting drama and sort of legal stuff. So The Fugitive, Schindler's List, The Firm, Indecent Proposal, cliffhanger, Sleepless in Seattle, Philadelphia, and The Pelican Brief.
Wow.
It's like a real...
Blimey.
Courtroomy year. Sci-fi movies that year: Demolition Man, RoboCop 3, Fortress with Christophe Lambert, which I rented on video, and Mark Hamill was in a movie called Time Runner. Poor old Mark Hamill in the 90s.
Yikes.
Not having a good time.
No.
So 1994 then, the year, November of which Star Trek Generations arrives. Number 1 at the box office, The Lion King, more Disney.
Yeah.
Forrest Gump, talking about special effects, and then True Lies.
Oh, I love True Lies.
But then also we're kind of dialing up American independent culture, by which I mean, we've talked about Nirvana in the last one being the musical kind of reference point. Pulp Fiction is the movie that's released this year. So
was that 94?
Yep. So that kind of, and again, it's like that started nascently, kind of at oh my god, what's it called? Sundance, and then a few years later, those directors are getting their second movie, their third movie, and things are really kind of taken off, and interesting things are happening. 1994 events. I've listed this one because I thought Rob would be sad. Cesar Romero dies.
Oh,
yeah, I know. Sorry. As does Kirk Cobain.
Oh,
I don't know if
sad one for us both.
I don't know if anybody will remember this apart from me, but Nancy Kerrigan, the ice skater, was attacked. American, but I think the Tonya Harding thing.
Yes, that's great. I love that movie as well.
It's based on that. O.J. Simpson was arrested after the death of Nicole Brown. Just a news story, a huge news, probably the biggest news story of the year. Chain bookstores outsell indies for the first time.
Wow.
Which I thought, just as it's funny how that happened, and that's a bit sad, and then the internet just made it all irrelevant by destroying everything.
Yes, very good
ER
point.
and Friends debut on NBC. Spamming becomes a noun for the first time as the internet becomes established. Blair becomes Labour leader. And in terms of music, definitely maybe Parklife, Nirvana, MTV Unplugged, REM release Monster.
Oh wow, what a time.
I know. Ugh. I feel like, is it actually interesting and different, or is it just a time we now start to remember? Who knows?
Don't know. Yeah, it's hard to say. Well, I'm very excited about the next movie. I've been excited about every movie. Star Trek Generations.
Same.
Don't put too much thought into that, Rob, and we'll find out what you think of it next time. It really is a brave new world of movies.
It really is a movie.
Just as you were getting used to the cast and crew, a time for a big change with some complete new people.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
I know that you already know the name Data and maybe Captain Picard, because you did that in the quiz in our very first episode.
Yeah.
The very last thing then, we finally reached the end of this excellent episode, if I do say myself.
The body language already. The body language, Dave.
Rob, just get it. Put us out of our misery. Are you a Star Trek fan yet?
I'm not. But can I say, the last episode was the closest I've been to saying yes. Only because I was annoyed at the end of film 5.
Yeah.
And I was annoyed with it for not being what I considered to be Star Trek-y enough.
Yes.
And I caught myself thinking, does that mean there's a thing that I like that this is not giving me?
Right.
And this film has made me realise I still don't actually know what that thing is. So I feel like I was reaching for it, and I've maybe just slipped a few rungs down the ladder.
Yeah.
But I'm on the ladder, and I'm looking up and I'm climbing.
Classic Act 2, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, I'm excited to see what happens next. You've been listening to Red Shirt Cinema Club. If you've enjoyed listening, rating and reviewing the podcast would really help us out. We'll be back next Monday with another episode, and in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email to redshirtcinemaclub@gmail.com, where a team of highly trained tribbles await your correspondence. See you next week.